I'm ready to go.
You gonna wear those headphones?
No.
Okay.
I just
Hey guys. Oh man, so cool for you guys to show up with us.
so rad.
Kevin. Hello, yo. Loud and clear. Thank you. Hey guys. All right, welcome to the fourth installment
Yeah.
of the Podshop here in Austin, Texas. I am joined with my co-host, Dan, and today we're going to talk about a number of things.
Yes. We're going to talk about is digital nomadism dead? A question that was posed to us, something we're going to chew on for a little bit. We are going to talk at the end of the episode about Entrepreneurmobiles. We're going to reveal what this concept's all about and basically how to drive awesome cars for cheap. This has been the number one question we've received. We're sitting in a car shop, so we have a lot to talk about. So we're going to talk a little bit about that concept at the end. But I want to lead us off with the world's most mildly onerous job. And then you're going to get to some news regarding small business administration grants.
You got an email. Actually, you've gotten a couple emails. The last couple months, this is what happens when you become what's less than mild? Like mildly famous. What's less than mildly famous?
Oh,
like
I see.
The lowest level of fame is you start getting threats. And you start getting emails from lawyers and things like this. And at first, it's kind of exciting because at first you're like, "Wow, I've really made it!" Like somebody wants what I have, and then now it just becomes annoying.
For those of you who follow the podcast, like we got threatened to be sued. We're going to name the company.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. F them.
F them. If you follow along with the podcast, this last year, somebody tried to sue us. It was Expedia. Expedia.com.
How come?
If you buy tickets from Expedia, maybe you shouldn't anymore. Those guys are jerks. Basically what happened was they saw our airplane logo, which was basically, the most generic logo ever. It was a circle, a yellow circle or an orange circle with an airplane pointed to the right. Yeah. And if you search on Google airplane logo, there's about 1,000 of them, and about 100 different companies use some variation of this logo. Anyways, Expedia contacted us, and they said, "Look, basically, you're using our logo. It looked nothing like the Expedia logo."
Right.
And so,
what I love too is their justification, like of the damages they might incur if someone were to misinterpret some homebrew blog and podcast for some booking engine.
I mean, just picking on the little kids over here. It's just absurd. Anyway, so I wrote him an email. I thought it was pretty clever, basically. And I basically said, like, no way. But if you want us to fix this problem, like, send us $25,000, I think I said, because there's a lot of costs involved in like changing this logo.
Yeah, by the way, we don't even have a replacement. So you were right.
This was their in-house lawyer that wrote us this email. And then eventually got escalated to an out-of-house lawyer. Yeah. And actually a fairly big firm.
They were legit.
Our legal team had dealt with before, and they said, like, "Look, guys, this guy's serious. The longer you drag this out, and the more complicated you make this, and the more fun you have, the more money it might actually cost you." So in the end, they won.
No airplane for the TMBA.
We took down the airplane from the TMBA, but what they don't know is that we have an audience, and so Expedia.com, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about booking your tickets,
here's the thing, you're still going to use Expedia if they got the lowest price.
our team members are still using Expedia.
Nobody
I was like,
cares.
Where did you book your ticket? They're like, Expedia. I'm like, I can't believe that.
One of the things I love about running a small business is that you could treat people like people, and it really sucks to work in a corporation where everyone is a process, not a human being. And speaking of which, let's talk about extortion as a business a revenue stream.
This leads us to an email that you got today.
So from a sales representative, he's insistent this time because for 2 previous times, basically, you know how back in the good old blog days, if a famous publication would write about you, you would put the logo of that publication on your site. So
as featured in.
Yeah. So 4 years ago, someone from like Entrepreneur reached out to us and interviewed us, and then they wrote an article with our quote in it. And then we said on our site, like, we were featured in Entrepreneur magazine. No biggie. Just gives you a little credibility, you know? And now I'm getting this email from this guy. I mean, he's got to be paying a spiritual toll for this kind of stuff. I hope so. I hope he's not laughing in the racquetball club all day long in New York City. But he's a sales representative for a company that has partnered with these publishers to try to get an extra revenue stream. So he says, basically, I got to pay a licensing fee annually to say that they featured me in their magazine. It's like,
so
bro, come on.
Read the email, because I think it puts this stuff into context, and I think it's helpful for people that get emails like these to understand that other people are also receiving them.
Yeah. Well, dude, I've gotten 3 emails from this. So the third email is simply insistent that his clients, Forbes and Entrepreneur Magazine, want us to either become a licensing partner for them.
Mm-hmm.
I just pissed because it's like human being style. Like, I spent hours of my life contributing to their site,
and then they wanted content. For it.
Yeah, and now they want to come just freaking.
Well, the first email
whatever.
that you got,
the
first email that you got actually named a price in it. Actually, there was a price in that email.
No, this guy is this is a product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a product, and now it's become a threat. So now the third email basically is like,
saying I'm going to go to a lawyer.
Hey, look, you got to pay us
for
putting this logo on your site. And then the joke in my mind is that in his profile or in his signature says sales representative.
Sales representative.
So he's threatening you.
Good man.
Yeah.
I'll just say this. Done. What I'm pointing this out is because I know as an entrepreneur, you do 2 things. You sort of put yourself out there, and then people are going to go after you one way or another. And so, no biggie. That's what we signed up for. But the second thing is, we get to do things with soul. And when I see an email like this, I feel thankful that all of us, we don't have to do this kind of crap for a living, because this is bullshit.
Yeah.
End of that.
He's got to tell his kids what he does during the day. That's unfortunate. Okay, news. Twitter is like my number 1 source for information and little nuggets these days, because it's just going crazy. There's so much content. Last night we were talking, some of these sports shows are having a hard time right now because there's no content.
Yeah, all my sports podcasts are like, remember like Larry Bird, he was cool. And then that's it. Like, right. That's the podcast.
There's no games on right now. But for us, is because we felt like there's so much to talk about right now. So I go to Twitter in the morning, in the evening, pretty much all day, and I look for stories. One of the stories that we've been talking about since the beginning of the show is these loans, or these so-called loans that the government is talking about. And essentially, there's been a lot of speculation, but Mark Cuban,
what up, Mark?
A couple days ago said, basically, get in line. There's going to be these loans that come out. You should inform yourself and figure out what's going on. So when they do appear, you're first in line and you can take advantage to maybe save your business. And we had a long spirited conversation about, is your business worth saving? Well, some of these, the stimulus packages are actually going through. I think it got pushed through the Senate today. I'm not sure what the next step is for it, but somebody on Twitter took the time, and I'm sure this is going to happen a lot today, took the time to read through it and distill it for us. Trevor Loy read through the stimulus package.
Thank you,
this
Trevor.
is basically for small businesses. So allowable uses of loan proceeds: payroll costs, salaries, commissions, health costs, health insurance, continued benefits, interest payment on mortgages, but no principal payments, rent, lease, utilities, interest on any debt obligations. So
what surprised you, though?
What surprises me about this so far as I can read, and I haven't actually read the documents, I'm just reading what people are saying on Twitter, is that this seems more like a grant and less like a loan. It seems like a Boy Scouts honor thing. So they can't come after you personally if you don't repay these loans, and there's no interest. So to me, that's kind of open-ended. It's like, I think the government is expecting people to, in good faith, pay these back, but the truth is there might not be anything binding to actually say that you have to pay these back.
Interesting.
So that's the first thing I learned. The second thing I'm trying to distill, and this hasn't come out yet, as far as what I've read, is doesn't include contractors. So I think for the government, it's probably easy for them to track payroll tax and payroll costs, and so that's why they're tying it to payroll and some of these other interest-based programs. What if you have a bunch of contractors? Because a lot of people do now. Are they covered? I also did read that it includes solopreneurs. So I think this might be worth exploring, Dan, if it really is like essentially a grant
Yeah.
There might not be any reason not to take it, unless, again, you have a business that maybe shouldn't be surviving anyways. You take these loans and then you feel guilty about not paying them back.
Right. One of the trends that was pointed out to us, I think it's worth mentioning. We were speaking with a high-level recruiter yesterday, someone who's helped us out a great deal with dynamitejobs.co, our remote job site. And he was mentioning that, it's pretty predictable in times like this that full-time employment is going to get whittled down. But those firms...
Oh, man. Ian's mic has some problems. What's my problem here?
Pretty... Push
Keep
it.
going.
Work on your connection there.
All right.
They pretty quickly rebound, and that's me sabotaging him so I can just talk the whole time. They pretty quickly rebound with high-level contractors. So I don't know if that's an opportunity for you in your business, but it's certainly a trend that happens in these moments.
I hope my mic is back on. People are commenting on that weird pen that you have in your hat. I think a lot of people are going to realize some of the idiosyncrasies that we have going on here.
We are not made for public consumption. That's for damn sure. This is a very unique experience. Is there any questions there before or insight into this grant stuff before we head on to our main topic?
I think it's going to be fun to track how to file for this, how many people get through, how immediate the money is. Man, one of the things I've been thinking about as it relates to all this and the stock market being down is like the downstream effects. Like everybody, whether you think this is going to be over in a week or a month or 3 months, there's going to be downstream effects. Like something like this happens, like a couple $1 trillion stimulus package happens, like there's going to be downstream effects, and it might hit 5 years from now. We don't know.
Okay, so you got downstream effects systemically that way, but the mainstream news media is terrible. I mean, the front page of the New York Times this morning is like shocked. There's 3.2 million Americans. This is real data or whatever, real news. But if you're thinking like an entrepreneur, like you actually care about what the truth is and you have to react to it and stuff, you're like, yeah, no shit. 1% of America lost their job in a global pandemic in 3 weeks. Yeah, of course. Like all the businesses are shutting down. But this is presented. It's just such a lagging indicator to me. Like, yeah. I mean, this is going to cut deep for sure.
Yeah, on
both
no
sides.
Chance.
On the system side, that could even mean from our banks to our currency to our system of government itself. And certainly, you just don't have to do anything but look down the block.
And what we're looking for is opportunities. That's what I'm most excited about still is like, yeah, things are going to get screwed up big time, but how are we going to capitalize on it? And not in a way that takes advantage of people, but actually makes real businesses better.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to the main segment of the show today. Man, I'm excited to talk about Entrepreneurmobiles tomorrow. I can't wait for that. Time zone disconnect.
We're putting our themes up on the wall here at our highly advanced production studio, the Podshop. Time zone disconnect and Entrepreneurmobile. 2 things for your notes today. This question of is digital nomadism dead? It's a question that's come up multiple times, and frankly, we've kicked it around quite a bit. And certainly, people with digital nomading shares are selling that stock right now. People who are holding homesteading shares are crushing it, and it's good. It looks like it's going to be a cooling off period for at least a year, maybe a year and a half. I mean, really, can you turn? It'll be interesting to see if the floodgate, so to speak, can open back up on digital nomadism with just a vaccine in place, or if there's any kind of half measures before vaccine, or if even in a post-vaccine world, say conservatively a year and a half, 2 years from now, that there's not other measures that make it more of a hindrance, like that the parallel to 9/11 security theater. Like, might you need to get a doctor's note to travel? Like, might countries require to track your presence when you're in their country going forward?
Oh, people are already talking about the health precautions or the health measuring devices and things like that in the airports and how they might just stick around forever. I mean, this is what happens in like a time period like 9/11 or the coronavirus. Is like these things were implemented, they were passed through. People basically didn't have a choice, right? These systems and processes get put in place and then they just stick around.
Exactly.
So what'll stick around? But in terms of digital nomadism, I want to go back, define digital nomads, and then I want to talk about the state of it and why we're even talking about this today. So digital nomad is to you what?
Digital nomad is someone who has a remote job or makes money otherwise from their laptop, essentially, and travels in the style of a backpacker. So a traditional sort of Leonardo DiCaprio movie, The Beach, I think is the ultimate backpacker cultural totem for me, at least. The Lonely Planet original books, you can go back and read those. That's this backpacker ethos of living on the cheap, being on the lam, moving around quite a bit, exploring the world as you make some money from your laptop.
Is a digital nomad somebody that has 20 employees, all scattered remotely across the globe, $3 million in revenue, and the CEO lives in Chiang Mai? Is that a digital nomad? Is he a digital nomad?
Yeah, because I think digital nomading is a lifestyle. It's not a commentary on how much wealth you have or the style in which you make money online. Like that, like Kean Graham's been on this show a couple times, and he's hiring right now. You can check it out.
I think we just put 20 positions on dynamitejobs.co for them.
And Kean is he runs a firm called Monetize More. So if you want to see businesses that are thriving in these times, and Kean is quite public about living a digital nomadic lifestyle. I mean, sometimes I get tired just reading about what he's doing. The guy's got an immense amount of energy to, stuff, because you have to do calls at night and in the morning, and you're traveling a lot and stuff. But for some people, certainly myself at a time in my life, is an absolute dream come true. I mean, you can't imagine anything better than the opportunity to see the world at your own pace, explore new cultures, meet new people. It's awesome,
But the reason we're talking about this is because now it's very hard to get on a plane.
Yeah.
A lot of people are stuck in these countries.
Well, that's why we're going to talk about Entrepreneurmobile, because I have a suspicion that it's not just y'all deal seekers out there that want to get a hot car for low price, but it's a lot of people that are now looking at a future where they might have to be in the same place for the next couple quarters, and it's like, well, I need some wheels.
Yeah.
And so I actually never met anybody in my life that's better at procuring wheels than this guy sitting next to me right now. So yeah, man,
get it one thing. So these digital nomads, reading through some of the comments on Facebooks, some of them are stuck, right? So it's like you can't leave. At some point, the president of the United States came on and said, look, basically come home now or don't come at all.
Yeah, interesting decision to be made. I mean, where are your chips going to go down? And we did talk about it on a few dailies ago. Like, it's kind of a fascinating, while you're sitting around playing gin rummy at night with whoever you're quarantined with, it's like, what country would you want to be locked down in right now? Where would you put your chips down? For me personally, Thailand, a classic digital nomad space, wouldn't be such a bad place right now. It's still the jury's still out on a lot of these locations. We don't know what's going to happen.
But what happens now in Thailand? Because most people have a visa. Most people are in Thailand on some kind of visa. What happens if your visa expires?
Well, there's going to be a lot of agile policy rolling out. So I've already seen that in Thailand, for example. If you have a legitimate excuse that you couldn't get on a plane, basically, the consulate is organizing with people to extend their stay legally. So yeah, governments are going to, have to participate in. You don't want to be the government who's demanding that people fly out of your country, right? You want to be. So it looks like there's going to be a sense of global cooperation on this point, but it remains to be seen. I mean, people could find themselves in some tough spots.
I mean, that's, you're going against the rule if you're staying past your visa. Now, we'll see what the government say about that, but I think it's highly unlikely. My personal perspective, I don't know, I'm not an expert on this, but nobody's willing to start a war over this, right?
We got these digital nomads stuck down here. Man, drinking all our Starbucks. We got to get them out of here. But, it's like, I wouldn't really blame the person who, you're hustling on your affiliate site network or your software tool. And, you just kind of like, you're on a little bit of a news fast. You're worried like the rest of us, but you got a mission, and you can't really blame the person who's like, just missed the warning, or, it's interesting because it's so unprecedented, this idea that, oh, this isn't going to blow over in 3 months. I still got 3 months left in the country, and maybe this thing goes to 4 months or 5 or whatever. So
a lot of them probably had to make a hard decision, and it might not come with it might come with consequence too.
Yeah.
I mean, you might think like, oh, I'm going to wait here and wait for this to blow over or whatever, but it might be heavy fines. I mean, it's hard to say. One thing I want to mention about being a digital nomad that I always try and take seriously is when you're in these other countries, you're a guest. You're a guest. Like, you don't have a passport. You don't technically live there. You're not a citizen in the country. And it's interesting to see people treat it as if like it's their home.
I'd also
now.
like to say that depending on what your behavior looks like, you're also a guest in your home country, right? Because it's pretty easy to get kicked out of that too and get, you know what I'm saying? Like, living situations in general are tenuous. Life itself is tenuous. So it's not like you're super secure if you have your passport and your location match up. It's just one.
Well, in America,
element.
you can go to jail, but
That's
you can't
what I
get
mean.
kicked out.
That's what I mean, man.
Yeah.
You want to be in American jail right now? Because we have, I think, the world's highest incarceration rate per capita, maybe something up there. And so, yeah, those people aren't guests anymore. We won't have them. But here's the thing about this digital nomading thing, because we talked about it a lot, and we didn't get very far. But there's one thing I wanted to mention, which is this idea of something I love about the digital nomad life is the sense of contemplation, wonder, and disconnect that comes from it. So this is the time zone disconnect. Being back here in America, being quarantined, having my phone in my pocket, I've reminded myself, I felt anxious a lot. That's what I'm getting to. Because our whole team's on one time zone. There's enormous business challenges for everybody right now. You're getting buzzed about challenges every 15 minutes. Now your friends are quarantined, so they're buzzing you. Your family's quarantined, they're buzzing you. And you can always sort of jump in to solve that problem. And it's just reminded me of how utterly connected I feel when I'm in America, when I'm on the same time zone as the team, and how reactive and how much like cortisol that can bump up in my system. And it's tough to be creative in an environment when you're just being interrupted by like bad shit all the time.
Well, you got off the lawnmower yesterday. We're grooming my yard. You got off the lawnmower yesterday to like write an email. I like look over and like there you are in the chair and the equipment's like, parked outside. I'm like, wait a minute.
I had like
what's going on?
I had like burrs. And I was like, man, this is going to look bad because it looks like I only have like the fortitude to mow the lawn for 20 minutes, which might be true. So, but you get real good ideas on the lawnmower.
This happens to me all the time, actually, in America. This is what got this. I think this is part of what got us started in thinking about this, which is this time zone disconnect idea, which is like when you're in America, you feel the pressure. You're going to get comments about that. Pen again in your hat.
Comment away.
You feel the pressure to be collaborative during the day because that's when everybody else is online. And I think one of the things that's going to come from this is this is kind of the American office culture too, which is like, depending on the type of work you're doing, especially information work, everybody's kind of like pushing the ball forward a little bit at a time during the day. Yep, exactly. You can do that online. Okay, everybody can sit in Slack and Zoom and Skype and all this stuff together, and you can do that online. I think people are going to realize that through this. It's like everybody went to their house, they worked, and it was pretty much the same thing, except you didn't have the office politics.
Well, tell me what's going on with y'all out there, because everybody that I've talked to, without exception, is saying they're working more right now. So it's going to be interesting to see like the impact that has on how business owners think about their teams. If it's true that everybody is like just plugged the F in all the time and responding right away and just on it. It reminded me of a little piece that I wrote. I was hanging out with my buddy Jeff, who I hope we can, when we get our board, we got to buzz Jeff into the show. It'd be awesome to have him on. Jeff helps us run all of our DC events. And we were hanging out in Chiang Mai for quite some time. And he sort of looked at me across the dinner table. He's like, I get it. Like I woke up this morning and like, there was a bunch of like dumb political shit that happened, but it was all condensed into a short article for me. And the football game that I bet on, it was in a 5-minute highlight reel. And my email was all sitting in my inbox and I responded to it in an hour. And then it's like 10 a.m. and I'm good. And then you kind of have this idea of like, what am I going to do today? Am I going to make a podcast? Am I going to write a blog post? Am I going to launch a new product? You kind of have this space to think about what you're going to do. Whereas here I have to be much more proactive if I want to be creative, because I'm just getting hammered all day long. And I felt that cortisol yesterday. And I thought, this is one thing, it's wonderful for collaboration. I don't think it's bad at all. But I always think about that. Like, you can really leverage that time zone disconnect, but you can also fall prey to it if your business does rely on collaboration or in-person communication.
Kevin Miller from the comments, and these are ramping up. Thanks, guys. And if you have any questions, please put them in there too. Kevin Miller says,
so here, let me do this. That's done. We're done with our.
Oh, we're not done.
Well, no, we're going to respond to the questions, and then we're going to move on to the entrepreneurs. So let's just do questions. Let's get through everybody's.
Well, there's not enough questions. If you were looking at this, you'd know that. If you let me finish what I was going to say, you'd know that. You want to run this? Kevin Miller says, working more, definitely miss working from BKK. So much less stress. Less stress. I was talking about the different arrangements in which there could be less stress. If you have I use the example of like a creative agency, somebody that has to create maybe art assets. If you're scattered across the world and your deadline is like 5 p.m., everybody dump their art assets here, and then, that's the deliverable. I think that works from everywhere. Like, you don't need to be on the same time zone. Everybody kind of distributes the work. Everybody works on their own, and then boom, puts it in there. And that is one of the benefits, I think, of working from somewhere like Bangkok, where you're on a completely different time zone from America. You kind of get your stuff done. There's not a bunch of distractions. It's quiet. That's great. But if you're working on a collaborative project together, it's very difficult. Or if you have clients, it's very difficult. See, so many people, strike their first consulting deal or start their first business that maybe they have clients that are in America. Like, perfect. I've been waiting for the opportunity to move to Bangkok. They moved to Bangkok, and then they realize their working day is basically from like 10 p.m. to 4 a.m.
You don't want to do that. Building a business is hard enough. Do not do that.
Yeah.
But leverage what you get in Bangkok, which is this free day. And Kevin, I'm sure you can relate to this. This is the feeling where if you're in the same time zone as your clients, customers, friends, family, whatever, when that person sends a message to you, they have an emotional urgency. And we've written articles in the past called the half-life of email. Well, just apply that to now Slack and Facebook Messenger and whatever. It's like, if you get that message, it's like, hey man, where's this thing? I need it now because I need it now because I think I need it now. And so I'm telling you, I need it now. And you're like, damn, this guy needs it now. That's the emotional response, right?
Yeah.
Now you're in Bangkok. Next thing, you get 50 I need it nows. And you wake up in the morning, you're drinking your coffee, and you're like, all these people are asleep right now. And you're like, oh, I guess he doesn't need that anymore. I guess he doesn't need that anymore. Now let's take it to another extreme. That's the half-life. Now you only need to respond to 25 instead of 50. Take it another day. How many of those messages are going to be relevant? In other words, if you were to walk away from all your messages for a week, which ones have any kind of timeless quality? Which ones are important? And the reality is very few. The bottom line is that events that would create a ruinous situation for your business are very rare. And even when they do happen, the idea that you're going to respond within 5 minutes versus 5 hours or even 5 days, I mean, I don't know, like, typically the 5 days thing is okay. So
Damien, furthering the question, says, how are you currently ensuring deep work? Any tactics beyond the Pomodoro technique? And maybe you want to explain what that is. I think it's a good question. In America, when you're connected to your phone, your whole team's on Slack, all this stuff is going on. How do you ensure deep work? I mean, deep work is essentially like, I'm going to disconnect for 4 or 5 hours. Nobody's going to interrupt me. And I'm going to get this like creative work done that I need complete, I need a good chunk of time where nobody's disturbing me. How do you do that?
Well, one question I think we're all asking right now is, can we afford it? Because there is a lot of reactive stuff happening in our businesses. There is a lot of legitimate fire drills, and even it's hard to have both, honestly. So maybe you can let yourself off the hook a little bit depending on what your business needs at the moment. I think, trying to be creative in a time of turmoil, even if just for a few days or a few weeks where you really got to react and respond and change things, I think that's okay to let yourself off the hook. So for me, the only way I've been ensuring deep work is that we sit here every day for an hour and we talk about which ideas we feel like are important, and it's a schedule thing. And you just sit down and you do it, and you're committed to a team. There's a team involved in bringing our podcast to light. And so if we don't show up, then the team's like, hey, what's going on?
Yep.
And that's how you do it.
Speaking of our team,
not just yourself. To me, it's get somebody else involved. That's the ultimate hack, is working with somebody that you serve and you're responsible for.
Alex from our team says, can you create a healthy work culture that sets the right expectations as to when it's necessary to send a message or an email and then when to reply? Yeah, I think that you can. I think it's also kind of personal too. For me, what I like to do is I don't mind getting messages all times of the day and at night because it helps me to I can see it when I want to see it, and then I can sit there and synthesize it as I wish, and then kind of respond when I want to. Like it doesn't really create anxiety for me. I think a lot of people though it does create anxiety and interruption.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I don't know. I just shut it off or I just don't look at it. So it's not a big deal. I think a lot of people, they have, they're addicted. They have to look at it all the time.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I'll see a bunch of emails and I just won't read them until I'm ready to read them. So I think there's a bit of self-discipline there, but I think Alex's question is a good one, which is like, should you design a system within your company where people only send emails from 9 to 5 or people only read emails from 9 to 5? Like, is it worth constraining this?
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question, Alex. Stumped us.
Yeah.
That guy knows us well. I'll say this. I mean, one of the things we've done is we've had a policy change in terms of like what happens in email versus what happens in Slack. And I think you have to be proactive about what you need as a staff member, as a owner, whether that's if you need more, if you need to touch base more, then you need to set up a system like, hey, I'm not effective unless we can jump on the phone for 15 minutes every day, or I'm not effective. I think it's very personalized, like what you're saying.
I think so too. I actually have fantasies of turning all the stuff off and just having my phone.
Yeah, just putting your phone number like on your Twitter profile and just call me.
Can you imagine? Because the gall it takes to call somebody if you don't have a serious question or you don't want to talk about like something that's going to get immediate action is like nobody would call that number.
There's too much friction.
There's too much.
It's incredible how easy it is to Slack somebody, email somebody, and how much it is to be a dick. But the moment you're on that phone, you're like, oh, Mr. Ian, how it's like, yeah. And so and there's a new generation that really demands that this stuff is not asynchronous, that like, because I sent you a text, I deserve one back.
Mm-hmm.
I can't roll like that. Sometimes I got to sit down and like explain how much of an a-hole I am and try in a productive way. But just because you send somebody a text doesn't mean you deserve one back. And I don't know.
Taylor says, how about a signature that says I only reply from email 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Something we did in our old business, Dan, is we only had the phones open because we were selling physical products and we had people could call and order. We only had the phones open from 9 a.m. I think it was to 3 p.m. And then we did like our office admin work from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. because it was really hard to like process orders and like talk to our factories and do all those things. So we actually trained our customers to only call us during a certain time.
Yeah.
And that was just like a matter, again, of like separating this creative work versus like this, processing order work. Because a lot of times talking to factories is creative work. Like you have to solve these problems. And so I think it's interesting to separate your day like that, and especially to set expectations with your customers and other team members.
Yeah. Fair enough. I personally, I would prefer to have, there ought to be like somebody on your team whose job and passion it is to do critical customer response. And that you wouldn't need to, you would respond in the way in which your customers want to be responded to. And as a founder, that shouldn't be your role, ideally. Maybe it is in the early days or whatever, but I don't want to be projecting to everybody like what my day is going to look like, because I want to be in charge of that. So that's kind of how I would roll. Entrepreneurmobiles, yeah.
Entrepreneurmobiles, here we come.
All right. So we're going to end the pod with a topic we've been asked more about than everything else combined, almost.
Weird.
And it's probably because a lot of people want some wheels right now. Maybe domestic travel wherever you're living is looking more appealing, and now's a great time to buy cars. And it's something that we've long talked about. Ian here has bought hundreds or 100?
Yeah, over 100 for sure.
He's bought over 100 cars in his lifetime, and he's helped me, a novice car buyer, go from zero to hero and have some really amazing purchases. And you help out people pro bono. This is like the nighttime evening news, like this guy's really a good guy story is like he's helped out a grandma go out and buy an affordable car and now she has mobility. Ian's probably done that. Like he does,
Yeah.
he helps people out all the time do this. And he's developed a concept called the Entrepreneurmobile, a car fit for an entrepreneur. So now's time to unveil the concept. We're going to lay out some of the basics. And then on tomorrow's episode, we're going to list the top 10 Entrepreneurmobiles
It's hard
for
to say.
2020. Entrepreneurmobile. And if you guys have any questions about this concept or cars, or you want to say like, what about this model? What do you think of my ride? Send us a picture of your hoopty, whatever. That's for tomorrow. So what is an Entrepreneurmobile, boss man?
Man, people are already getting excited about this. Thank you.
Tell your friends. Tomorrow we are going to unveil a list, and it's going to be serious. There's going to be make and model wars.
Yeah.
We are going to argue over quite a deal. This is going to be exciting for sure.
So the idea of the Entrepreneurmobile is directly related to baselining. And baselining is basically figuring out a way to get your expenses and your living costs so low that you can start and run a business effectively and not have to worry about your personal overhead.
Yeah.
And a lot of people living in the United States, part of that equation is a car. You got to figure out how to get around because our cities are too separated. And so I developed this concept of the Entrepreneurmobile when I started doing it myself, which was basically, how can I buy a car that's essentially fully depreciated, meaning it's never going to be worth less than it is now for the most part, at the right cycle of maintenance. So meaning like this car has been maintained. It's not going to need a lot of maintenance or servicing. And essentially, like, what are the best cars to do that with? Because there's a lot of cars on my shit list.
Oh yeah.
Which I would never, even on my worst enemy,
and you know what sucks?
tell them to buy.
You know what sucks about Ian's shit list too is that there's a lot of like awesome cars on it, right? So one of the most painful parts about learning your system, so to speak, is that you see all these cool cars that Ian's like, no,
shit list.
That's but what makes it simple is like once you hear the cars that you can buy and the mileages and the prices that you can buy them, it clicks. And it's all of a sudden like, basically you go out and you buy a car for whatever your budget is, whether it's $3,000 or whether it's $15,000, it doesn't matter. Even $35,000, there are Entrepreneurmobiles that are at any price level because it's not about absolute cost. It's about the depreciation curve. And so you can drive a car that you bought for $5,000 and 4 years later, when you want to buy something cool because your business did so well, you sell that car for a $500 discount. So it costs you $100 a year to drive the car. That's the concept. And now, if you're my age, something that can be hard to grok about the Entrepreneurmobile concept is you might be thinking, well, if I buy a $5,000 car, like I'm going to have to be at the shop all the time. The wheels are going to be falling off, you know?
No.
Well, that might have been true when we were 16 as a 40-year-old. You're thinking the cars that were 15 years old were real shit heaps for the most part.
Yes.
And what's happened is cars have been a little bit like smartphones, like a 2014, 15 smartphone, or maybe, I don't know when the curve, but everybody saw that curve where it's like, yeah, my 2016 smartphone is like just fine. I used to buy a smartphone every year in October. And this current S9 Samsung is the first one that I've just kept because it's like, I don't know, it's fine. And I feel like used cars really hit that. What year would you say was like the year where cars kind of in general sort of like,
there's plenty of cars from the 90s that are still good automobiles. I think really the only thing that's changed, or two things have changed, is safety. So if you're really concerned with safety, a newer car is a good idea. The other thing that's
but not a new car.
Newer
yes
car.
And we're going to safety is a big concern for everybody. So
yeah, and I'm looking at my very safe car outside right now, which is a 2006, which is essentially 15 years old.
But it has a timeless design.
Timeless design, and it's still very safe. And there's ways that you can figure out how safe it is. Actually, the government, National Highway Safety Association, whatever it is, they keep track of how many people die in different makes and models of cars.
Yeah.
So you can actually see, you know, as morbid as it is, how many people have died in a Honda Civic. So safety is one thing. The other thing is technology. And really, the technology for most people comes down to an emulator in their dash that has their smartphone screen in there. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what people want. It's Bluetooth, and they want to see their apps. So
Well,
that's easily solved with $500.
just as an example, my latest Entrepreneurmobile is a 2007 top of the line Honda Odyssey. And I always go online and I look up at the new Honda Odysseys, and I'm sharing with Ian, like, I, worked the streets, so to speak, for 2 weeks to get this deal. I got it for $6,000 in cash, and it's a really nice car. It had like 115,000 miles on it, leather interior, backup cam. Like, it's just a really nice car, cruise control, everything. It's like, what would I get if I spent $40,000 on the brand new one? I would get adaptive cruise control. I would get a vacuum cleaner in the back. I can get one of those anyway. And I would get a computer in the dashboard that's not as good as my iPhone. So it's like, that's what I mean about these cars kind of like leveling out in terms of what they're offering. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a car. Like, now they're trying to turn them into computers, which they're not as good of computers as what Apple and Samsung can create.
And a lot of them have like 3 computers in them, and you're going to want to stay away from those. Alan Walton, dude, thanks for showing up. Says 90s Land Rover is a great entrepreneur mobile. Diehard online community to diagnose problems, easy to repair, lots of room for taking packages to the post office. And then Eric comes in and says, dude, no Land Rover English car is on this list. I'm torn on this, and actually we can talk about this because Land Rovers are historically hunks of shit. That being said, the older ones, there is a strong community for them, and there is a lot of parts available for them. The other thing is that these things seem to be holding their value because there is a community around them. So tomorrow I want to focus on Entrepreneurmobiles, which are good for baselining and figuring out how to keep your expenses low. But if you're like me and maybe you've got a little bit of extra cash aside, there is going to be an opportunity to buy your dream car here coming up, probably, if this keeps up. And what I mean by dream cars, some car that you think is out of reach. A lot of these cars that you think are out of reach, for me, it's 911 GT3 RS. They're very expensive, but the chances that you are able to sell them for more or the same that you bought them for, if you buy them right, Dan, is very high.
And I'll say this too: there's not name the model of the car you're in love with again.
GT3 RS, of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I had a physical reaction. There's not a big market that's actually propping up those prices. So the amount of people in America that want to buy a what?
GT3 RS.
Yeah.
There you go.
There's a very few of them, and now in this market there's even less of them. So in other words, like, when you look at like the price of milk or whatever, there's like millions of people determining that price. But when you look at the price of the 911, there's a very limited number of people, and if things change for them, then the price can change radically. So it's a really cool opportunity.
It is really lighting up on the boards over here. I love this. I got a 98 Chevy camper van for under $2,000 with an ocean mural on it. That's awesome.
Oh, hell yeah.
That is the definition of an entrepreneur mobile.
Hell yeah.
But I am going to need to know the engine in that thing so I could tell you if it was a good one.
Who was that? Give
Noah Hart.
Noah Hart. Respect for the camper van lifestyle, van life.
Taylor Banks says, I think I saw that one on Facebook Marketplace. Yeah, Facebook Marketplace is actually becoming it's probably overcome Craigslist at this point.
I'm checking Class B RVs for sale. I think they have like 50,000 members in there. That's where like that camper van might have shown up. All different kinds of things, from like the old school, like white sort of painters vans. They call them like the creepy vans. What we're talking about here, those can be converted, but now people are getting more into the Sprinter category because you can stand up inside of them. So that's like the more newer Amazon vans. Really exciting to be able to get one of those because you have toilet, shower, sink, stove, bed. Just drive right up to the trailhead, right? Straight up to the golf course.
Yep. Straight
up to the restaurant, the bar, and boom, you're there. How cool is that? That is super cool. That is super cool.
All right, Dan, let's get into it tomorrow.
All right.
I'm going to start formulating my list because it's changed a little bit. I wrote that first article, I think, probably over 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's one of the most popular articles on our site. So if you want to dig into the rationale of this, Ian makes a really in-depth argument, because one of the things I found about the Entrepreneurmobile, you guys are like super switched on to this concept, is if you try to like share it with Gen Pop, they have a lot of emotional resistance to the idea. There's a lot of fear around car buying, and we'll hopefully try to dispel some of that. And I got to say a story, like you know, even me, I had emotional resistance to doing this, and it took me a few times to get used to it. And my mom ended up doing her own Entrepreneurmobile deal on her own.
That's awesome.
Even using like your advanced psychological tactics, where she had a friend, and I don't know the exact story, but it was something like she was a widower and she just wanted kind of like, she didn't want the hassle of having to sell the car and she wanted to be in good hands. And so my mom got this amazing luxury Lexus for way low, and it's like safe, it's fast, it's beautiful interior. It was owned by older, responsible people.
Mhm.
So my mom is like, just, she's laying back in the cut in this hot Lexus that she bought for cash. She's riding an Entrepreneurmobile. Shout out, Mom. That's so
awesome.
cool. I love it. And that came from you, man. So you're really affecting the world in a positive way.
We're going to get into it tomorrow, Dan. I'm going to start on my list right now.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back
Thank you.
tomorrow with our list of top 10 Entrepreneurmobiles. Plus, we'll be covering some of the news. Thanks for joining us.